Uh-oh. Mass transports out of the ghetto? That's really bad news. But did you get everything else Daniel just talked about? Let's go over the details. Okay, first Daniel hears on the radio that Hitler and the Germans are going to lose World War II. Thank goodness. Later, Daniel hears about D-Day and the Allied invasion of France. He doesn't really explain what it's all about. But I remember from history class that the Allies were the countries who fought against Germany during World War II. They included the United States, Great Britain, and also the Russians. Near the start of the war, the Germans took over France. On D-Day, the Allied soldiers went to France and kicked out the Germans. D-Day was like the beginning of the end for the Nazis. It's no wonder the Jews were happy about it. Daniel also mentions that the Russians are advancing. I think that means that they are coming to free Poland, and the Jews there, just like they freed France. More good news. In the meantime, though, the Nazis are planning to move the Jews out of the Lutz ghetto, and we know what that means. Okay, let's go back to the story on page 68.
Esperanza is thinking that Los Angeles might not be so different from home because it's green and alive, not dry and barren like the border. But life in the U.S. in the 1930s was difficult, even in Los Angeles. In 1929, the stock market crashed and the Great Depression began. It was the worst economic crisis this country had ever had. In California in 1932, more than a quarter of all workers were unemployed. Because it was so hard to find a job, the authorities regularly sent thousands of Mexicans back across the border so they wouldn't compete with American workers for jobs. So knowing all that, what do you think Esperanza's life will be like in the United States? Go on to the last paragraph on page 87.
Do you know who Joan of Arc was? I've read a little about her. She was this French farm girl who led the French army in defending France against an attack by England about 600 years ago. She claimed that the voice of God spoke to her and told her what to do. I guess Anita wants to help her country the way Joan of Arc helped France. Only Anita hasn't heard any voices, and she has no idea what to do. One other thing. Did you catch that stuff about Lorena, the maid, going through the desk drawers? Mommy has never trusted Lorena, remember? And now she seems more certain than ever that Lorena is a spy for the SIM. Let's keep reading. We're at the top of page 59.
Clash of the Titans is a good title for the section we just read. The Titans were gods in Greek mythology who were giants. They ruled the world for ages until arguments and younger gods led to their destruction. So Melinda sees the adults here as Titans, larger-than-life gods who rule over her while arguing among themselves. The adults really don't seem to have a clue what to do about Melinda. Still, I'm glad that they finally noticed that something is wrong. Okay, we're on page 116 in the middle of the page at the section titled Miss. I like what Melinda says about the Maya Angelou poster. Maya Angelou watches me, 2 fingers on the side of her face. It is an intelligent pose. Maya wants me to tell Rachel. What's interesting is that in real life, the poet Maya Angelou had an experience similar to Melinda's. When Maya Angelou was a young girl, she was sexually assaulted by her mother's boyfriend. He told her that if she told anyone about what happened, he would kill her brother. Maya told her brother anyway. Not long after, several men came after her mother's boyfriend and killed him. Maya felt she was responsible, that her words had caused someone's death, so she literally stopped speaking. It wasn't until years later, when a teacher helped Maya come to terms with what happened, that Maya spoke again. This is why the author put a Maya Angelou poster in Melinda's closet. The 2 women, one real and one fictional, were both afraid to speak after being sexually assaulted. Let's keep reading. We're in the middle of page 151 where it says, I take off.
Jing Yang's father thinks his daughter is marked to follow an exceptional path in life. What do you think that means exactly? Well, he gave her a name that means courage, and it sounds like he's not going to raise her the way most girls are raised. In fact, he says he refuses to do that to her. So I'm guessing that to follow an exceptional path means to live your life in some really special and unusual way. By the way, I don't know if you've ever heard about having your feet bound, but I'm glad it's not going to happen to Jing Yang. I read about it in social studies class. People in China thought that small feet were pretty, so they used to wrap little girls' feet with cloth to make them stay small. It was very painful and it made the girls' feet deformed. No wonder Jing Yang's father refuses to do it. Let's read on and find out if Jing Yang really will follow an exceptional path. We're on page 7. It starts with, instead he sent her to the tutors.
Okay. In this part of the story, the kids are visited by two people who have spent their lives fighting for human rights. One of them is Graça Machel, a woman from Mozambique. She travels to war-torn countries and makes the world aware of how women and children are hurt and mistreated in these places. The other person is Nelson Mandela. He is a black South African who spent 27 years in jail for fighting against apartheid, a South African system of laws that were extremely unfair to anyone who wasn't white. Mandela helped end apartheid and later became president of South Africa. To prepare for the visit, children wrote letters, poems, and stories. That 11-year-old girl's quote is really interesting. She said she knows how to write peace because her teachers have taught her the letters, but she doesn't know what it really means. I think that's because she's always lived in the middle of a war. She has no idea what it feels like to live in peace. Let's read on. Go to the first paragraph on page 43 where it says, another child wrote an anonymous letter.
POW stands for Prisoner of War. POWs are people in the military who've been captured by the enemy. During the Vietnam War, some Americans wore POW bracelets as a way of remembering U.S. soldiers and pilots who had been captured. Let's pick it up on page 33 with the paragraph that starts, Billy doesn't stir. Who's Polly rank 118, which starts, later at the table. By the 1970s, the Vietnam War had become extremely unpopular with many Americans. Sometimes anti-war protesters would even shout insults and spit on returning U.S. soldiers. But still, many Americans supported the war and were proud of the soldiers. And many people who were against the war didn't like the way that the returning soldiers were treated. Let's pick it up in the middle of page 124, where it says, after a long moment,
Have you heard of Yiddish, the language that Jenny's grandmother was speaking? It's a language spoken by many Jews in Germany, Poland, Russia, Eastern Europe, and by immigrants from those places. What else do we know about Jenny's grandmother? First of all, she's a Holocaust survivor. As you probably know, the Holocaust was one of the most terrible events in history. During the 1930s and 40s, the country of Germany was ruled by a dictator named Adolf Hitler and his political party, the Nazis. The Nazi army also took control of Poland and other European countries. The Nazis blamed Jewish people for a variety of problems in Germany, so they rounded up millions of Jews along with other groups they didn't like and sent them to prisons called concentration camps. Many of the prisoners were killed. Others died of starvation or disease. In all, at least 6 million Jews died. We know Jenny's grandmother survived the Holocaust because Jenny says that she was in Auschwitz, a notorious Nazi concentration camp. Clearly, Jenny's grandmother has been through a lot in her life. Let's keep reading. We're at the top of page 112.
Hey, did you get all that about the Yankee President Lincoln being killed? Here's what I know from history class. The Yankee President Lincoln was President Abraham Lincoln. He was the President of the United States during the Civil War. Lincoln wanted to keep the United States together and put an end to slavery, but the South wanted to leave the United States and become a separate country, in part so that slave owners could keep owning slaves. During the war, Lincoln gave an order saying that all slaves were now free. Right after the war ended, Lincoln was shot and killed. So that's what Cook's talking about when she says, maybe we not free then, since the man who free us is dead. But Cook needn't have worried. In 1865, the same year Patsy wrote this diary entry, slavery became officially against the law in the United States. Let's keep reading and find out what all this means for Patsy. We're on Sunday, April 23rd.
Do you know what Elizabeth is talking about? I remember from history class that Pearl Harbor Day is when Japan attacked the United States and we declared war on them. It was part of World War II, and it happened on December 7th, the date that Elizabeth's writing. Let's keep reading and find out why she feels like she's in a war. We're on the second paragraph on page 86. Hey, are you getting all this war talk? It's a little confusing. Okay, I think I learned in history class that AWOL, or absent without leave, is a military thing. When the Army lets soldiers go on vacation, it's called leave. I guess because they're leaving their duties. If a soldier takes off without permission, that's called going AWOL, and it's a very bad thing. As far as Tara Starr is concerned, Elizabeth's mother keeps running around and leaving her kids alone when she should be doing her parently duties. So Tara Starr says she's AWOL. As for that other war word, truce, I think it just means that both sides in a war agree to stop fighting. Hope it happens soon in Elizabeth's house. Let's finish Tara Starr's letter. We're on page 93.